welcome to Scrollin', episode 81. I'm Ket, Davius Starjumper, back in the saddle. Welcome back, dude. How you doing, Davius?
Thank you. Happy to be back.
It's good to have you back, Davius. Who's this Starbuncher?
Who's this Starbuncher? Have I been replaced by Starbuncher?
Episode title, Starbuncher. Well, we have a lot to get into. We're going to talk about the public test server for the upcoming Lost Depths DLC. This PTS has received a pretty critical, or has had a pretty critical reception, I would say. There's a lot of people with a lot of concerns. ZOS seems to be pretty aware of that. We've had tweets from the official ESO Twitter account. We've had developer comments on the forums in different places. Seems like they're just trying to put people's minds at ease, kind of reminding everyone that, hey, week 1 doesn't necessarily represent what week 5 is going to look like. We have gotten the feedback. We do have some adjustments planned for week 3. They're kind of getting out there and letting everyone know that, you know, this is kind of how it goes. Because, you know, they don't normally, I feel like they don't normally respond that way so quickly after PTS comes out. I think the only reason they're doing it this time is because there has been a very negative outcry, I would say, initially to this round of proposed changes. I'll admit my initial reaction was pretty negative as well, but we've had a week now. Like, week 1 came out last week, and I don't know, during this time, kind of like usual, once I've kind of marinated and everything and kind of stew on it for a week or so, a lot of my negative reactions have subsided. I'm still concerned about some things. I still do very much want to see some adjustments. But there actually are a lot of really good things happening here. And overall, I think I am looking forward to this patch if we can address a couple of little things that I'm pretty sure they're going to.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think, you know, this patch, the week 1 patch notes, obviously not the week 2, but the week 1 patch notes really kind of reminded me, you know, of just, it's been a minute since we've seen some of those, but even when they first started talking about the light and heavy attack changes, they announced this crazy huge plan, and then they kind of abandoned it, you know. So it kind of reminds me of, we haven't had one in a minute, but of those week 1 PTS where the numbers are just insane and kind of a little bit out of control. But if I'd be willing to bet that, you know, as we see week 3 and as we go forward, that things will get a little bit more normalized, if you will.
Yeah. I think so. I think this week 1 definitely gives you an idea of their intention, you know, like it gives you an idea of like what direction they want to go. It probably just won't end up being quite as severe as what we see here, but it at least kind of hints to what we might end up seeing once it's all said and done.
Yeah.
Just a quick summary of everything we're going to be talking about. We'll be talking about the DLC content itself. We'll talk about some new armor sets, changes to some existing sets, changes to light attacks and heavy attacks. Dots are being restandardized. HOTS are being restandardized. There's some other combat and balance changes that I think are going to be pretty impactful as well. So it's quite a bit. It's probably going to be kind of a long episode. So I guess let's just go ahead and dive in. So PTS version 8.1.0. 8.1.1 week 2 technically is up now as well, but there's nothing really in the week 2 patch notes worth focusing on at all. So we're really just talking about week 1. This is for update 35, the Lost Depths DLC. It's coming out August 22nd on PC, and then 2 weeks later for console. What's that? September 6th, maybe? Something like that?
Something around there.
This will be a typical Q3 DLC, so it's a 2 dungeon pack. Both dungeons are located in High Isle. They're called Earthenroot Enclave, and the other one's called Graven Deep. I don't know anything about them. I haven't seen any footage or anything, but I assume they're kind of piratey, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah. It's kind of the theme, right? A little piratey, a little.
If there's not at least one boat involved, I'll eat my hat.
Actually, I could see the Earthenroot Enclave maybe being a little druidy, if you will.
Okay, that could be, more about druids and stuff.
Druid-like.
Yeah, you're right. This will continue the Legacy of the Bretons year-long adventure. Davis, are you excited to continue the saga of the Legacy of the Bretons?
I mean, you know, I keep going around this island. I ask myself this question: where are all the Nords? Where are we at?
We just had a bunch of Nord stuff.
What are you talking about? We could go right back into it.
We could. I don't know. I feel like the dungeons. I don't think I could tell you a story from a single dungeon in this game. Like what is actually happening.
Whoa. In any of the dungeons? You've done I know you know one of the stories, and that's good old fashioned blanking on the name, but it's the one where it's just like an arena and you're just going in there to kill people.
Oh, Blessed Crucible.
Blessed Crucible, you know that story. You just go in there and it's like, hey, we all get in here and we kill each other, and the one who lives the longest.
I know that one because there really isn't a story. It's just we're all here to fight, and that's it. So with this dungeon pack, we'll get the usual rewards. You can earn cosmetics, titles, mementos. There's some furnishing items I think you can get as well. And there's a bunch of new armor sets. So we have a bunch of new dungeon sets, and there's some new rewards for the worthy PvP sets as well. So we're going to do like we've been doing the last couple of times, and Davius and I are each going to pick a dungeon set a piece to talk about, and we'll each pick a PvP set to talk about as well. So Davius, why don't you go first? What's the dungeon set that you want to talk about?
All right, so the dungeon set that I picked is the Rage of Ursoc set. Okay. It's a medium set. The 2-piece is the 2 and the 3-piece are both offensive penetration. The 4-piece is crit chance, and then the 5-piece is that when you deal damage with a heavy attack, you create a 12-meter basically buff or aura for 12 seconds that grants some power to the allies inside of it. It's got an 8-second cooldown.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like this one. You know, the more I think about it, the more I kind of come around to it. To me, it's very werewolf-like. The idea I really like is if you're running with a pack of werewolves, you know, in a zone, and one of the werewolves has this, just giving empower to the whole crew. Empower is very good on a werewolf, and it can be a little tricky to get empower on a werewolf. But, you know, the more I look at it, I think I might actually end up throwing this on my werewolf. I've been kind of looking for a new build setup, and I had an idea, and they made some changes that murdered that idea. So I'm looking for some slight changes, and so I think this might actually... one of the sets I'm going to keep, but I think this might end up being the other set that I throw on that build.
It seems like that can work well, and I think really, as we'll see as we get into things, I think Empower in general is going to be kind of a big deal going into this next meta with things changing with light attacks and everything. That seems really good. Yeah, it basically makes like an AoE on the ground, and anyone standing in it gets Empower while they're in there.
Yeah, seems pretty good.
Very nice. The dungeon set that I want to talk about is Euphotic Gatekeeper. That's one of the monster sets. The 1-piece is a line of stamina recovery, and then the 2-piece, after you use a roll dodge, you create a Hadolid Husk, which is like a monster kind of creature thing. While within 5 meters of the Hadolid Husk, it will absorb all direct damage attacks against you, and then after 1 second, it explodes and deals poison damage to everyone within 5 meters. And that has a 20-second cooldown. So I think that cooldown kind of kills it. 20-second cooldown off of something that procs off of roll dodge. My first thought was to combine it with the Eternal Hunt set that it creates like a trap on the ground that immobilizes and damages people after you do a roll dodge. That set has no cooldown. It leaves a trap every single time you roll dodge. Mm-hmm. I think if they reduce the cooldown of this set here to maybe 5 seconds or 4 seconds or something like that, and just adjust the damage accordingly, that might be an interesting combination of sets to use. You're leaving that trap that immobilizes people. You're leaving this Hadolid Husk that essentially extends the effectiveness of your roll dodge by a full second, and then it does some damage as well. It just seems like that could be a fun kind of gimmicky build. That would be.
Oh yeah, we kind of came up with a full build idea for this one. You know, we're looking at all these roll dodge sets. I don't think either one of us will actually build it or ever use it, but you know, we had some fun throwing some ideas out there.
Yeah, we did. What's the rewards for the worthy set you want to talk about?
The rewards for the worthy set. Now, I will say I don't think I'll actually use this set, but I do like the idea of it. I could see it being a really good Necro set. It's Langer of Periite. Okay. GrizzlyCon will double check us on the pronunciation here in a couple of minutes on that.
I think Periite, that's it.
So the 2-piece is weapon and spell damage, 3-piece is crit resist, 4-piece is offensive penetration. Now the 5-piece, you deal 6% increased damage to blocking players, period. And then the continuation of that is when you deal light attack damage to an enemy that is immune to crowd control, you apply Langer for 10 seconds, reducing their magic recovery and stamina recovery by 248. It's got a 10-second cooldown. So kind of a cool idea to reduce the recovery of players. I could see that being pretty good. Kind of a nice debuff set. It seems very Necromancer of me. Kind of, what you have going on with Despair. Kind of a debuff Necromancer set. It's got a lot of CC. Throwing debuffs out there.
It seems like a potentially really good set. There's kind of a lot going on there. You deal 6% increased damage to any blocking player. I think the proc condition is really funny when you deal light attack damage to an enemy that is immune to crowd control. You apply this Languor debuff. When we were first reading through this, we thought that was pretty funny because, like in Battlegrounds, you're in one of two states, right? You're either CC immune or you are under the effects of CC.
You are currently CC'd. There's no other option.
Yeah, so if you just light attack someone who isn't currently being stunned, then probably you're going to apply this Languor thing to them.
Yeah.
And reducing their magic recovery and stamina recovery by 248, I assume that's pre-buffed. So, their major and minor recovery buffs and stuff being factored into that, you're probably taking closer to maybe 400 or so from them.
Yeah, I could really see that being one of those sets that, like, you don't really see it on the stat sheets, but in a big, a big brawl, a big fight that kind of goes on for a little while, you're getting to the end of their resources quicker. I could see that making a difference for sure.
All right, the PvP set that I want to talk about is really the one I think most people are talking about out of these new sets. It's a medium armor set. It's called Nocturnal's Ploy. It's one of the rewards for the worthy sets. I think the 2 through 4 piece bonuses are really interesting. You get a line of penetration, a line of crit resistance, and a line of stamina recovery. It's a very diverse lineup of 2 through 4 piece bonuses. And in the 5 piece, get a load of this thing. When you apply a major debuff to an enemy, you remove a major buff from them, a major buff with a duration. And when you apply a minor debuff, you remove a minor buff with a duration. And each of those procs independently, they each have a 2-second cooldown. So they're independent cooldowns. That seems like an incredibly strong PvP set.
Yes, very much so.
So the way it's worded, it doesn't seem like you have to be applying different debuffs. Like, if you just keep applying Major Breach over and over and over again, I think each time you apply that, you're stripping away another major buff and another one and another and another.
Yeah, that's how I read it too. It just kind of picks one. I don't know how it would pick priority there, but that's the way I read it too. Is that if you do it, it's going to remove maybe the most recently cast one on them.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it'll prioritize that. I'm also thinking of Caltrops, for example. That applies Major Breach to anyone who's standing in it. And I think the way that works is it's constantly reapplying Major Breach, like every second or maybe every 2 seconds, but it's like reapplying it over and over and over again. So I think if you're standing in Caltrops and whoever cast it is wearing this set, then it's just constantly stripping away a major buff over and over and over again. And eventually you'll just have no buffs active at all. It is important to point out the wording. It strips away a major or minor buff with a duration. So that means sets like Mighty Chudan gives you major resolve at all times. That can't be taken away, right? This set won't do anything against that. Also, Oakensoul builds are completely immune to this set. And I have a feeling this set is actually going to end up being pretty popular. And I wonder if that is going to make Oakensoul even more attractive as a result. And Oakensoul is being adjusted. We're going to talk about that later. It's still going to be very, very good.
Yeah. It's kind of the perfect time for this set to come out with the changes coming to Oakensoul. It seems like it'll be, we won't get into that right now, but it seems like Oakensoul is going to be less popular. And then this set's kind of coming in and seems kind of like a good, perfect time there.
So that's all the sets we're going to talk about. In general, though, I think they have a pretty interesting lineup of sets with this DLC. I think they did a pretty good job of being creative, and nothing's really crazy overpowered, except maybe this set that we just got done talking about. But everything seems at least useful for some type of build you can imagine a use case for it. I definitely recommend going to forums.elderscrollsonline.com and click on the PTS or the public test server section and look at those 8.1.0 notes if you want to see the full list of all the new armor sets and everything. In addition to new sets, we have some adjustments to existing sets. We'll skip some of them, but I do want to focus on these light and heavy attack sets. They seem to really be focusing on this. So the Noble Duelist set. It no longer gives weapon and spell damage to your light and heavy attacks. It adds 2,110 flat damage to your light and heavy attacks against monsters.
That's the part. It's kind of like, all right, maybe, against monsters. It's
strictly a PvE set. Not to be used in PvP. It won't do anything for you in PvP. Undaunted Infiltrator and Undaunted Unweaver. Those are like stamina and magicka versions of the same set, essentially. Same exact treatment. They no longer give weapon and spell damage to your light and heavy attacks. It gives 1645 flat damage against monsters to your light and heavy attacks. So again, only a PvE set. Don't even take it to PvP. It's not going to do anything for you.
Yeah. These were the sets, by the way, that I was talking about with my werewolf. I was going to make this like light attack, heavy attack build, and for PvP, and I was like, maybe this will be cool. You'll hit for a crazy amount with light and heavy attacks, and nope, that is deleted.
I think a number of heavy attack builds do use these sets, and those builds are dead. Well, there's other things going on that we'll get to in these patch notes. Heavy attack builds, at least in PvP, don't exist anymore.
I've sent an email to Zos complaining that indeed some of the people we run into in Battlegrounds are indeed monsters, just complete monsters. So
yeah, so it should technically
we'll see
count.
what their reply back's going to be. You know,
that's a good point. Sergeant's Mail set, it didn't get the monster treatment. Actually, it's a totally different set now. So it no longer gives 3,031 weapon and spell damage to your fully charged heavy attacks. Instead, it causes your heavy attacks to gain these stacks, up to 4 stacks max, and each stack increases your heavy attack damage by 645. So that'd be 2580 total if you have all 4 stacks, and the stacks last for 5 seconds. And they did drop the fully charged heavy attack terminology. They just say heavy attacks, and usually that means that medium attacks will also work to build those stacks and to deal the bonus damage. And it seems like that one still will work in PvP.
Yeah. The light, on these light and heavy attack sets, the one that really stood out to me was the Blood Moon set. It doesn't really give actual specific numbers, but it's very light and heavy attack focused.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that one actually still could be pretty good. That's actually one of the ones that I plan on still keeping on my werewolf. But that's the one that increases your light attack damage by 50%, but it also increases your light attack damage speed by 50. It's your light attack damage by 55% and your light attack damage speed by 50%. So that one's interesting to me that one kind of, I guess because it doesn't have numbers, it didn't get touched, but I could see that one still being pretty good.
So we kind of saw this one coming, I think, or a lot of people did. The Savage Werewolf set, been a super duper popular set for all these cracked out Bosorks that we see everywhere. But that's not going to be happening anymore because this set now only procs in melee range. So sorry, Bosorks, you can't use this set anymore. Also, the dot ticks every 2 seconds, and they do clarify that the damage does still get dealt immediately upon application, which is intended. I think there's some uncertainty about whether it's actually supposed to be working that way. That's kind of the reason it is as strong as it is. They do clarify that is intentional behavior there. So it's still a really strong set. Any melee build can keep using it, and they're going to get good use out of it. But the main spec that's been kind of having their fun with this set is Bosorks, and that's just not going to happen anymore. This might end up actually being the least of those builds' worries, honestly. We'll get into some other stuff.
Part 1 of why they have disappeared.
Yeah, all the people who've been running this like meta Bosork build, your days are numbered. I'm just giving you a warning. Your days are numbered. Have your fun while you can. Here we go. The Oakensoul Mythic Ring.
That's a big one. This is a biggie.
It's getting its first nerf. They grow up so fast, don't they?
So fast. Oh, man.
I was expecting to wait like a full year, like until the next chapter before they started adjusting Oakensoul. But here we are with it's the very next update, and they're already adjusting it. And I gotta say, I'm very impressed. Probably because they're adjusting it exactly how I said they should.
Exactly. To a T from what you called.
Oh, man.
They're usual listeners to the cast. They went, oh, this is a good idea.
That's what I was going to say. This is further evidence that Zos is listening to the show and stealing all of our ideas and not giving us any credit in the patch notes. We're on to you, Zos. But yeah, totally called it. So, Oakensoul. So basically what it does now is your major armor buff, your major weapon and spell damage buff, and your major crit buff Those all stay major. Everything else goes to minor. So now it is minor courage, minor berserk, minor force, minor protection, and minor heroism. And as an extra little bonus, they added minor mending into the mix as well as a little extra. Here you go. Which I think is kind of nice. They're kind of like, sorry for nerfing your favorite mythic. Here's minor mending. Please don't be mad.
This should make up for it.
I think that is just an absolute perfect adjustment to that mythic item. It is exactly what it needs to be now. I'm actually a lot more interested in this item now than I have been up to this point, because it's not just ridiculously overpowered. This version that we're looking at here, it looks like it's just very, like it makes a lot of sense to use for a certain type of build. You have everything you need for a build, and I've been tinkering around with putting together some 1-bar builds with this version of the mythic item, and things are looking really, really good. I think this is still an excellent, excellent item. There's, of course, been a ton of debate on the forums and everywhere else. A lot of people saying, Zos ruined my favorite mythic item, and this is not usable anymore, and that sort of thing. That is absolutely not the case at all. And I think if this version of Oakensoul was the first version that any of us saw, like this is the first time we've ever seen this item, we'd take a look at it and we'd probably say, man, that looks like a pretty awesome mythic item.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
It's just a shame we had to have it introduced to the game in this totally overpowered state. And so then when they nerf it, a lot of people, it's just nerf equals bad. And that's just the end of the thought process there. But I think if you can get past that, I mean, if you're using this on a 1-bar build, you're still going to have way better buff coverage than any 2-bar build could possibly have, with 100% uptime on everything. You still don't have to waste any time, like mental energy or resources, casting any buffs ever. And you might not be overpowered, but I think you'll be plenty adequate to do what you want to do. And in some cases, this is going to be a buff for certain builds. Like I'm going to talk about my Magical Warden a little while later. This is actually going to be a buff for that character. I've been using Oakensoul on that build lately, and it's been really, really good, but I've been theory crafting for this nerfed version of Oakensoul, and it's actually going to end up being better for that build. Like it's actually going to have better overall buff coverage for the buffs that are relevant to being a healer. And I think other people are going to find some examples of that. Like actually this quote-unquote nerfed version of Oakensoul works out better for this build. It just so happens. So I think that's really cool. Zos, their developer comment basically says they're responding to feedback, and this change is based on the feedback that they've gotten, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it makes a lot of sense. This ring was worn by way too many players. Yes, it's new, it's exciting, but when the majority of the player base all uses one item, Zos is going to go in and try to not make that so. And like you said, this new setup is still really good. I know that you're going to continue to use it. I'm going to continue to use it. I'm going to use it on multiple characters, even after this nerf. So
it's really funny. We're both like Oakensoul fans all of a sudden.
I know. We have kind of come full circle on this thing.
Yeah, we'll talk about it a little more in depth later. But I've totally turned around on Oakensoul. I think it's such a cool item. Even like its current version being overpowered and stuff, it's fun to use, and I'm having fun with it on a healer. But them kind of adjusting it to be a more reasonable item, it honestly makes me more excited to make builds with it and not feel like I'm being unfair to people who aren't wearing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah. Kudos on that one. Great change. Here's another awesome change. Dark Convergence.
Oh, awesome.
Davius, one day I'm going to be on my deathbed, and I'm going to be gathering my loved ones around, and I'm going to say, guys, let me tell you about the happiest day of my life. It's going to be the day that Dark Convergence was nerfed, finally. It's not even that big of a nerf, but I think it will have a big impact. So all they did was they increased the cooldown to 25 seconds instead of 15 seconds. And they say the reason for that is to help reduce the frequency in which it can introduce ultimate-like effects on the battlefield. I think that's a very great way to put it. Ultimate-like effects, absolutely.
Yep.
So I don't know. What do you think, David? Do you think that's enough of a deterrent? 10 more seconds to the cooldown to make people maybe not want to use it so much?
I do actually think that's going to be a really good deterrent. I mean, you know this about BGs. Really, with most abilities or sets or anything in a BG, anytime you start creeping up from 15 seconds and longer cooldowns, it kind of the usage rate of that drastically drops, because nobody, like, if it gets longer than 15 seconds, then you're waiting a little too long to use it.
Right.
And I think this is right up. I mean, we just talked about, that roll dodge set. It had 20-second cooldown. We're like, man, that's just too long. So when you're talking about dedicating an entire 5-piece set to something that you can only use every 25 seconds, and you're waiting 10 seconds longer, I definitely think that's going to be... I actually think this is a very good change, and that builds that like this set will probably still be able to use it effectively. But now it's not going to be this set of, hey, I'm doing PvP, so I'm going to throw in Dark Convergence because that's what you do.
Yeah, as it is right now, I mean, I see healers use Dark Convergence. I see people who aren't even necessarily building around it. It's just a useful set to use regardless. I really like this change. I do think that a 25-second cooldown, that's long enough for at least a certain portion of the population to decide, okay, I'm not going to use this set anymore. And then of the people who are left, who are still using the set, it's going to be proccing a lot less frequently. So overall, you're going to be interacting with Dark Convergence a lot less often.
The way that you know us with numbers, we're real good with the numbers, right?
Great with numbers, so good.
This is kind of the way I looked at it. 15-minute battleground. If you cast this every single time it's up at a 15-second cooldown, in 15 minutes you can cast this ability 60 times. You can get 60 procs. With this new cooldown, in a perfect scenario, that's getting cut down to 36. That's the part that really made me kind of think okay, this is going to be much more manageable now.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it into perspective. I also think another thing to keep in mind is, a really popular build that uses Dark Convergence are those Necro Bomber builds that use the Colossus ultimate along with Dark Convergence to just wipe a group of people all at once. I think those builds have no reason not to just keep using it, because that Colossus ultimate is really expensive, and they're probably not getting it more than every 25 seconds anyway. So I think that's still going to work perfectly great for that specific build, and really that's the kind of build this set was intended for anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
For wiping groups, not just annoying people just by wearing this set.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think this is a good change.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. 25-second cooldown.
And not just me and you wanting them to delete this set from the game change. I think it's actually a good competitive change is what I mean by it being a good change.
Yeah, it seems like it's only really going to be appealing to the types of builds that it was designed for.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, Plague Break. Man, we are on a roll here. Oakensoul, Dark Convergence, Plague Break, all just
here we go.
Touched on. Plague Break now has a cooldown of 20 seconds per target. Rather than right now, it has a cooldown on itself of 1 second. It can be reapplied every 1 second. And that really solves... Plague Break isn't really the biggest deal in the world to me. It is a very strong set, and I've definitely been blown up by it a few times. But the thing that really irritates me about Plague Break is you effectively cannot cleanse it off, because it has a 1 second cooldown. Someone applies it to you, you cleanse it off, their very next attack puts it right back on you. It's like it never goes away. So now they apply it to me, I cleanse it off, and now that 20-second cooldown has to expire before they can put it back on me. So that pretty much kind of solves my woes on that. Another side effect of that, though, is now it can proc on multiple people simultaneously. If you roll up to a group and drop a Dawnbreaker on all of them, you can apply Plague Break to every one of those people simultaneously. And so again, I think that kind of makes it actually, in a way, better for the types of builds it was intended for. If you're trying to wipe a whole group, if you can apply Plague Break to everyone simultaneously, that seems like you're going to have a much better chance of actually wiping that group. But anyone you don't kill, it's going to be 20 seconds before you can put it back on them. That just seems like a nice, smart change. I like that.
Yeah, I actually think this is a good change. I actually use this set on my Stam Crow, so his build I'll probably drop the set, but it is a good change. It was a little overpowered right now, and especially with that build, it was kind of my lazy build. I had the other Morpha Bombard on there. I can't remember what it's called, but he just basically would just fling out that AoE and just know that this is just thrown. And that was just kind of the whole build, is just, all right, throw this out there, wait for people to blow up. It was kind of my lazy build, little OP, so I'm actually kind of, I think this is a good change, and I'll probably drop the set and find something else, but Plague Break was a little OP.
Yeah, right. As it is right now, this is absolutely a set you can throw on any build. You don't have to be a bomber. It's a great 1v1, it's going to perform great no matter what. So definitely now you're actually going to want to build for it if you're going to use it, which I think is a good thing. The dot damage is also decreased by 48%, but it can crit now. But even so, that's still a pretty big nerf to that dot damage. The explosion damage has been increased by 3%, and I'm guessing that's not able to crit. So you actually get a little bit more out of the explosion component. And the damage now always applies the diseased status effect. So anyway, the dev comment, they basically said that Plague Break is too popular for non-bomber builds. Like basically everyone's using it, and they really want it to be specifically used for that kind of group wiping scenario. And I think this maybe achieves that. It seems like it might.
How many patches and updates have come around since these sets were introduced? Plague Break, Dark Convergence, whereas Oz was like, hey, we're introducing these bomb builds that are supposed to break up, groups and large PvP. And it, however many patches later, they might have finally gotten there, where these are just good bomb sets.
Yeah.
It's taken us a minute to get here, but I think that they're finally there.
Well, these two sets, it's like their 1 year anniversary. They were introduced Q3 last year.
That's crazy to think. It's crazy to think.
Yeah.
But I think they're finally maybe where they were meant to, what they were intended for.
Plague Break is nice. It's nice that that's getting nerfed. Dark Convergence, though, that's what I'm really, really happy about. That's the one that griefs me every single day. Kingnar says they need to remove Dark Convergence. I agree. They need to just delete it, but that's probably not going to happen, so I'll take a nerf. No Rush of Agony nerf. We were kind of on a roll here. We nerfed Oakensoul, we nerfed Dark Convergence, we nerfed Plague Break. Rush of Agony was just all that was left, really, as far as sets that are just egregious in my mind.
We were so close to the full bingo. I mean, we were just right there.
Hey,
we had it all.
PTS isn't over yet. It could happen.
Hold out hope.
And hey, these adjustments that are happening, I think that Oakensoul change is really smart, really good. I'm actually really looking forward to the new corrected Oakensoul. I don't even want to call it a nerf. It's just like what it should have been in the first place, really.
Should have been at the launch.
Yeah.
I mean, it's had a long journey over a short period of time, so.
And it's been, I mean, it is fun. It's a cool, fun mythic. We're going to talk about it a little more later on. That's all the armor set stuff that we had to talk about. Some good stuff happening there. Some cool new sets. Some smart adjustments to some existing sets. Heavy attack builds deleted. A lot of good stuff. Let's get into some combat and ability changes. There's some really, really impactful stuff happening here, and we're going to skip some of it. So definitely check those patch notes for yourself if you want to see every little detail, but we've tried to pick out the juiciest stuff. So let's start off with light and heavy attacks. They're changing light and heavy attacks. From now on, or as of this update, they're going to deal a flat amount of damage rather than scaling with your offensive stats. And the amount of damage is going to depend on your weapon, but basically, long story short, it's going to be like 20 to 30% less than the damage your light and heavy attacks are dealing right now. So definitely anticipate, I mean, those numbers could be adjusted next week. We'll see where we end up. But
sure.
But in general, it seems like they want light and heavy attacks to deal less damage in general. The dev comment says their reasoning is basically they want to reduce the skill gap. They want light attack weaving to give you less of an advantage than what it does right now.
It's interesting that that's kind of their comment, because the biggest takeaway I get from this is that they're just, this is kind of an answer for power creep for them. And
that's what I think it really is.
Yeah, and none of these long, year long, decade long games have figured out a great answer for power creep, in my opinion. I don't think anybody's figured out the perfect answer for it. And, each game's kind of coming up with their own solution to it. But that's how I take this, is that they've got to have some sort of solution for they're coming out with a new dungeon that needs to be competitive, while another dungeon that you can do at the same level, you could literally solo with your eyes closed by yourself.
Yeah.
They've got to somehow close that power creep gap. So
I feel pretty neutral on it myself. Like, I don't really mind light attacks doing less damage. I think the fact still remains that if you want to do the most possible damage that you can possibly do, you're going to want to light attack weave, because that's just free damage that you're missing out on if you don't do it. So I don't feel like my actual experience of how I play the game is really going to change at all. So I don't know. I feel basically indifferent about this change personally.
I just look at it as kind of one of those that it is less damage, but everybody's getting less damage. Heals are going, there's going to be less heals, there's going to be less damage. So it's just kind of everything's going down to kind of, I don't know. I get, that's how I kind of look as the nerf, is that it's not like a specific nerf that's going to hit me. It's going to, everybody's going to be doing less damage. Everybody's going to have less healing. And so that kind of makes up for it in a PvP sense. I know that there's a lot of PvE that's a little worried about this with the DPS numbers going down pretty drastically.
That's the main kind of criticism that I've seen that makes really good sense, is that it doesn't actually really reduce the skill gap, really, because your really elite players that are like getting all the hard achievements and setting records and stuff like that, they're going to be doing a bazillion damage no matter what. They're going to figure out a way to still set those records and all that stuff. It's the people who are right on the cusp of getting those achievements and completing that content. They're real close. This is going to pull them a little bit further away from that. It's those mid-tier players that they can light attack weave, and they're pretty good players, but they're not the best. Those are probably the people that are going to be impacted the most, I think. But nonetheless, me personally, I don't really feel too strongly about it either way. Related to the light and heavy attacks, Empower now adds 1,800 flat damage to your light and heavy attacks rather than increasing them by 40%. So that's just what Empower is now. And like I was saying earlier, it seems like they're trying to make Empower more of a thing, more of something that you might want to try to get into your build. And we'll see more examples of that as we go.
It definitely seems like a lot bigger deal. I mean, just look at that light attack damage. If their light attack damage is 2,000, but you're getting 1,800 damage from that, that's a lot more than 40%.
Yeah. Dots are also changing. So, in general, all dots are now going to last 20 seconds instead of the 10-second standard that they have been. Also, the damage is going to tick every 2 seconds on every dot, rather than, like right now, some dots tick every 1 second, some tick every 2 seconds. Now it's every 2 seconds, every dot across the board, and they're all going to last 20 seconds. The DPS of the dots are going to be decreased by about 25%, and the cost is going to be unchanged. The dev comment says they basically want dots to be easier to use. They want you to spend less time keeping track of those timers and more time casting other, more interesting abilities. Basically another way of reducing the skill gap. I actually really like this change. Like for PvE, I think they're right on the money. I don't want to be spending all my time juggling all these dots. It's nice if I can cast 3 or 4 dots and then forget about them for like 15 seconds and cast all my other abilities that are more fun to use.
I 100% agree with you. I think it's going to be really good for PvE. I think it probably makes dots kind of unusable in PvP, but I mean, there's not a whole lot of really heavy dot builds right now. They're just kind of, something to have on the bar. And so maybe there's some slight changes to that, but
it definitely makes them have less value in PvP for sure. And I think Dragon Knights and Necromancers in particular are going to feel that. I know our buddy Uncle Sam, Necromain, he says this is really going to hurt his build quite a bit. But just speaking selfishly, I think I like PvP metas where dots don't do a lot of damage. You remember the dot meta back in the day?
Oh, I try not to. That
wasn't a lot of fun. I don't like it when damage can easily be dealt passively. If someone can throw a couple of dots on me and then run away while I'm just like slowly melting behind a wall, I don't like that. I like it when I like high damage metas, but I like that damage to be intentional. Like they're coming at me, they have to pull off a combo and successfully execute that combo to take me out. That's kind of how I like my PvP.
That was the worst thing about the dot meta, in my opinion, was it was just you'd be running and you would just drop dead and you'd look around and you're like, who the heck just killed me? Nobody's near me. Yeah. Like, what? How did I just die?
There were so many times I'd find myself just like alone, hiding behind a wall and just fighting for my life, casting every heal I have, trying to out-heal these dots with no one
like,
around.
What is going on right now?
Yeah. So I actually really like this change to dots. PvE seems like when I'm doing PvE, my rotation is going to be a little more fun, and it's going to make the PvP meta something more what I enjoy. Heals over time are also getting changed a little bit. So basically the goal is they want single target or sticky hots to be weaker, and they want AoE hots to be stronger. That's kind of the general overall goal. And that makes sense. Like, if you throw down a ground AoE, you actually have to be intentional about where you're putting that, and other people have to be intentional about where they're standing to get that heal. So it makes sense that it should be a stronger heal. But abilities like regeneration, like rapid regen and radiating regen, those are sticky hots, and so that type of ability is getting nerfed pretty substantially, actually. We'll see some examples of that.
Yeah.
Again, that's another thing I really like. I think this is addressing cross-healing in PvP, something we've been complaining about for a few patches now. And really, regen is the primary offender of that, and it's one of these sticky hots that are being nerfed, and I think that basically is going to largely solve that problem.
I actually love this change. I like the idea that they're bringing more skill to healers.
Yes.
Like, most, I think the lack of, all of these sticky hots, most of the healers are really not healers, but if you're going to melt those, then it's going to cause a need for a healer, but it's going to cause a need for a actual skilled healer, and I love that idea. I think that is very much needed. So this is actually one of my favorite changes, is that let's have healers actually go in there and focusing and trying to aim for spots and have some of the same challenges that people in there are doing damage and trying to hit people with abilities and stuff. Healers need to experience that too.
Yeah, that you're totally right, because the way it has been for a while now is a lot of healing is kind of brainless. Like you have 4 people on a team, all 4 people just spam regen a few times and then just forget about healing for a while, and it's kind of taken care of. They do say that their goal is to make healing a more intentional, like deliberate sort of thing, and they're not touching burst heals, like instant heals at all. You still have your 16k tooltip, breath of life, or whatever. That stuff's all still there. So healing can still be super duper strong, but only with intentionality behind it. I think that's great. It's perfect. Great change. And I don't really think it's gonna affect PvE. Like in PvE, healing is like overabundant. I feel like it's really easy to overheal in PvE. I don't think it's even going to be an issue there.
Yeah. And and just kind of summing that up, the light and heavy attacks, the empower, the dot changes, the hot changes, I think you're on the same page with me. I'm actually kind of okay with all this. Like, none of those are really bothering me. Like, they were a lot to take in when we read the PTS. It's like, whoa, look at all this stuff. But kind of what you were talking about earlier on, like, now that I've kind of, the dust is settled, I don't have a problem with those.
Yeah. I'm feeling okay about these changes. I'm basically indifferent about the light and heavy attack stuff. The dot changes I think are good. The hot changes I think are good. So far so good.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Dragon Knights. I think Dragon Knights are looking pretty good here. The dot changes are going to affect them negatively, and they're going to feel that more than most, I think. But other than that, some really interesting things happening here. So the Molten Whip, spammable. That's the morph that you can build up those 3 stacks, and that increases the damage of your next whip, and it gives you these stacks of weapon and spell damage. So they're decreasing the amount of bonus damage that those stacks give to your whip. It's 22% per stack instead of 33% per stack now. So a bit of a damage nerf on that end, but those stacks also give you 100 weapon and spell damage per stack instead of 75, and those stacks of weapon and spell damage don't get consumed when you use the whip.
I've read through this one multiple times, and I honestly wonder, like, in the grand scheme of things, in the long, thinking always from a PvP standpoint here, but like in a full battleground, if this won't actually result in more damage. Not the finishing power, but an actual overall more damage.
Yeah, it seems like maybe so. Like, you might actually, in general, be doing more damage, because that basically, when you're actively engaged in combat, you're going to have a permanent extra 300 weapon and spell damage basically at all times because of this change here.
And that's a 5-piece set right there. That's a weapon damage from...
That's Giuliano's 5-piece.
Yeah. There we go.
Just for free. So, less burst potential Still pretty good burst potential, though. That thing had like over a 20k tooltip on a lot of builds, so I think it's still actually going to hit pretty darn hard. And you have that permanent 300 weapon and spell damage. I think that's really great. Also, this is interesting. The cost is split 50-50 between Magicka and Stamina now.
The first true hybrid ability.
Yeah, and the devs do say they want the ability to be easier to use for Stamina and hybrid builds, which I think that's definitely going to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
I did make a note that the Flame Lash morph, nothing changed about that at all, and I don't think it needs to. It's still a totally great. That's actually the morph that I prefer. So yeah, nothing's changing there. Empowering Chains, the class gap closer, the one that pulls you to the enemy, it now gives you Empower for 10 seconds instead of 3 seconds. So there we go. We were saying there's going to be some more. Empower is going to be more of a thing. In 10 seconds, if you're using this, if this is on your bar, you're going to have permanent Empower. I mean, 10 seconds at a time.
Absolutely.
Just every single light attack is going to have that extra 1800 damage. So that's really nice. Molten Armaments does the same thing. It will now grant Empower for the duration of that ability, and that's like 36 seconds, I want to say, long. So that's permanent Empower from that ability if you want it as well. But here we go. It no longer increases the damage of your heavy attacks. It used to get, or currently right now, it gives 40% bonus damage to your heavy attacks. It's not going to do that anymore. And that's kind of the final nail in the heavy attack build coffin right there.
I'm not sad to see him go.
I'm not sad. I'm definitely not going to miss those 33k single heavy attacks. Certainly not. I'm talking 33k. How much damage I take from a single heavy attack?
Yeah.
I've definitely seen them. So I mean, those heavy attack sets got nerfed. Heavy attacks themselves got nerfed. This ability that basically heavy attack builds rely on doesn't do that anymore. So those are just gone. Those sets are just deleted now. Or those builds are just deleted now.
Or they do it against monsters.
Or you can do it against monsters, but not as well as you could before, really.
Not as well as you could, that's true.
And then Burning Embers, that's the Fire Claw dot that you put on people. They put it back to healing for 100% of the damage done instead of 50%. And they say that's because dots are going to be weaker now, so they felt like it was a good thing to do. And that makes sense, I think. That seems good. What do you think, Davius? Is Lord of Nords your DK? Is he going to be all right after all this?
I think he's coming out of this unscathed. Really, the only thing that's going to kind of hit him is that I used that breath, and you actually kind of made me have eased my mind on this. I use that breath as a spammable, but the only nerf it's getting is the dot portion of it, and that's not really huge. I mainly use it just for the initial damage and the debuff. Mm-hmm. And so I think that can still stay the same, and I think it's actually going to be kind of nice. The only change I might look at is maybe trying to get that 300 weapon damage.
Get Molten Whip on
weapon
there?
damage on the bar, but I don't know.
That's an Oakensoul build, isn't it? That's tough.
I don't know if I've got the bar
that
spots
bar space,
for that.
It's tough.
The bar space is a little limited.
Dude, it's
limited real estate there.
We're going to talk about it later. We just now jumped on this Oakensoul train like days ago.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
But man, it really is fun. Like, you really have to like think about every bar slot and get the most value you possibly can out of every single one. It's really a cool way to make a build. I found that I've enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. Necromancers, the Skeletal Mage ability, the base ability and its morphs now last for 20 seconds instead of 16. They reduce the cost by about 1,200. The Arcanist, the magic morph, increased the AoE radius to 5 meters instead of 4 meters. And then the Skeletal Archer, the stamina morph, this one seems to be buffed pretty significantly. Increased the damage done per stack up to 15% instead of 5%. So the way this ability works is every attack right now is 5% stronger than the last. Now it's going to be 15% stronger than the last, and it lasts longer, so it's going to ramp up even further than it did before.
Yeah. I'm really interested to see if this is going to get this Skeletal Archer to be a pretty popular ability. I mean, I could see that really ramping up.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how that performs. That seems like a significant buff. Like once it's towards the end of that duration, it seems like it's going to be pumping out some serious damage.
Yeah, I agree.
Here's the biggie. The Spirit Mender reduced the healing by 48%. Almost half.
It had to happen, but it's sad. Had to happen, but the day has come. The reckoning is upon us.
We knew this day was coming. You could see it a mile away. This thing has been way too strong for way too long.
Shout out to the fifth man on the team if you're in a BG.
Absolutely. I am sad to see it. My Necro healer super duper crutches on the intensive mender because it's basically just doing my job for me. I just have to make sure that thing is active every 8 seconds. Just push that button again, and that's the healer. I'm doing other stuff, you know. It's so good. It's so incredibly strong. It needed to be nerfed. This is a significant nerf. I'll still use it on my Necro healer because what else would I use in its place, you know? But you know, we had our fun. It was fun while it lasted.
It's kind of interesting because the reason it's getting nerfed is not for the healers that used it. The reason it's getting nerfed is because the DPS necros that were just throwing this on there like, oh, hey, I'll just throw this on there and have a crazy heal in the team. That was getting a little out of control, but it is kind of sad for the necro healers.
Our friend Uncle Sam, Stamcrow main, he'd have his 10,000 weapon damage Stamcrow running around with an intensive mender in a battleground, and the thing has a tooltip that's like twice the amount of my healer's intensive mender. So yeah, I had a feeling that this hybridization would be the thing that kind of tips this ability over the edge of someone taking notice at ZOS, be like, hey, we got to do something about the Spirit Mender. That's a little ridiculous. The Death Knell passive. The Death Knell passive now increases your critical chance by 8% per Gravelord ability slotted instead of 4%. That's against targets who are in execute range, is only when you get that. But 8% instead of 4%, that's a pretty good buff. And then the Rapid Rot passive now increases your dot damage by 10% instead of 15%. Bit of a nerf there. And dots themselves are being nerfed considerably as well, right? Uncle Sam says this really hurts his build quite a bit.
That's what I was going to say. All thoughts out there to Uncle Sam.
Yeah. I don't know. Necromancers are getting some good things, some bad things. That Spirit Mender nerf definitely had to happen as much as it hurts. I think Necromancers are probably going to be okay, honestly.
Yeah, I think they'll be
really
just fine.
Strong class all around. Nightblades win the patch, no question. Ugh. I mean, they come out on top 100%. So the main thing that everyone's talking about this patch is this new Surprise Attack. Surprise Attack is the stamina morph of the class Melee Spammable. It now always critically strikes when you're flanking an enemy. 100% crit when you're flanking. It already stuns your enemy when you're flanking them, so now it stuns and crits on them every single time. So that seems strong.
Yeah.
For PvE, that seems pretty darn amazing since you're always flanking a boss, so your spammable is critting 100% of the time. And also think about dots are twice as long now, so you're spending way longer periods of time spamming your spammable, which is critting every single time. That's going to be super duper strong in PvE. PvP too, obviously, you could come out of stealth with an end cap, you get a guaranteed crit on end cap out of stealth, and then you can keep coming at them with guaranteed crits from your surprise attack as long as you're flanking them. Most Nightblades have quite a bit of movement speed. They try to stay on your flank already anyway. So that's just a straight up major damage buff.
Yeah.
I was saying just on the last episode how Nightblades are kind of on a rampage right now, and it's basically mandatory to have some sort of anti-stealth in your build.
Absolutely.
That's going to be more true than ever this next patch. Nightblades are about to have their time. I mean, they're already kind of having it right now.
That's what I was going to say, is that they're pretty prominent in BGs right now and pretty effective. And so that's getting ramped up. I'm a little nervous. Of our invisible friends and BGs.
Oh, they're about to go nuts. So Surprise Attack, that's the stamina morph. The Magicka morph is actually getting some really cool stuff too. It doesn't get that guaranteed crit from flank, but it does do the guaranteed stun from flank. It's always done that. But also now it gives minor expedition at all times while slotted instead of the 25% movement speed while you're in stealth. So minor expedition is 15% movement speed, so it is a bit slower, but it's at all times. You don't have to be invisible or anything to get that. I think that's better. I actually think that's a good thing. And then in addition to that, Concealed Weapon also increases your weapon and spell damage by 300 for 15 seconds when you leave stealth while in combat. So it's a, they just did this with the DK. They have this free 300 weapon and spell damage tied to your spammable ability, and now they're doing that with concealed weapon, 300 weapon and spell damage tied to your spammable. In 15 seconds, that's a really long duration on that. There's a vampire passive that does that. You can use the Stygian armor set. That would stack to like 1,000 weapon and spell damage when you come out of stealth. That could be really, really strong.
Could be real nasty, and we will probably see that.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we're going to see more melee mag blades. There was a point in time when melee mag blades were kind of the hot thing. It was kind of like what the cool kids were doing there for a while.
My thoughts were, if these changes aren't enough for you to bring your Stam blade off the shelf, I don't think anything is. I don't think he's ever coming off the shelf.
I kind of have some ideas cooking for Catface Johnson.
For old Catface Johnson, the OG character.
That is one thing. Actually, it's one of these other changes that I'm kind of more thinking of, but we'll get to that here in a second. So, next ability, Killer's Blade. That's the class Execute ability, the Stamina Morph. It's basically going to work like the two-handed Executioner ability now. It's going to scale up to 400% additional damage based on your target's missing health, starting at 50% health. Rather than right now, you get a straight 300% increased damage as soon as your target dips below 25%. You could look at it as a nerf or a buff. I think you can look at it a couple of different ways. I think, really, though, this new version makes it easier to use. There may be situations where it's technically not as strong as the old version, but in general, I think it'll be easier to use. Still, though, spend to win is the king of executes, and I think most of the time, most people are just going to want to use that no matter what. It's kind of my hunch. Blur. This is the ability that I think is the most interesting. So Blur is the class ability that gives you major evasion, and it puts that kind of bubble around you. That's what the base ability does. Now, in addition to that, it's going to reduce the cost of your next roll dodge by 10% whenever you take direct damage, and that stacks up to 100%. So you take 10 attacks, and your next roll dodge is free, basically. But I was thinking, even if you take 2 or 3 attacks, a 20 to 30%, cost reduction to roll dodge, if you're wearing a couple of well-fitted pieces as well, I mean, that's going to be super duper valuable. It seems really, really good. And both morphs of Blur are really great. There's one morph that gives you snare removal as well. So you have one ability that's giving you major evasion, this free roll dodge thing, and snare removal. That has a lot of value right there. Aspect of Terror, that's the class like AoE Fear ability. So it now applies Major Cowardice to anybody it hits for 10 seconds. Major Cowardice, that's the anti-Major Courage. So I think it takes away like 430 weapon and spell damage pre-buffed. So it'll probably be more like 600 or 700 once you account for buffs that you're actually taking away from your targets. That's a very, very strong debuff.
Yeah, for 10 seconds.
10 whole seconds. They also increased the target cap to 6 instead of 3. That's the base ability. The Mass Hysteria morph has no target cap. And then the Manifestation of Terror morph no longer lays 2 traps. It only lays 1 trap at your target location. That's it. And probably the one nerf to Nightblades, the Dark Cloak, that's the other morph of invisibility, the one that heals you instead of turns you invisible. It now heals for 20% of your missing health per tick, rather than 9% of your max health per tick. So I think there may be situations where that actually is stronger, but I think in general, overall, you're probably getting less value out of it.
But still a good heal.
Yeah, it still seems like it could be good in the right situation. I kind of have a feeling less people will use it as a result, though. It's just kind of my hunch. But in general, I mean, that crazy surprise attack and concealed weapon buff, either one seemed really, really good. And Blur, the new Blur with that roll dodge thing, and then the Aspect of Terror with the Major Cowardice. I think Nightblades are about to have even more fun than they already are.
Yeah. In the solo BGQ right now that is where Nightblades hang out. And I think that's only going to increase.
Yeah. on the opposite end, so if Nightblades are winning the PTS, Sorcerers are probably losing the PTS. At least Sam Sorks, I would say.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might be a tie between Stam Sorks and Templars. We'll weigh it out.
I'd probably give that win to Templars, but
yeah,
we'll get there.
So Crystal Weapon is having its damage reduced by 41.5%. Also reduced the cost by 1,500. And Bound Armaments reduced its damage by 38%, and it no longer increases your light attack damage. Those are two key abilities that these Bowsorks have been using, right? The Savage Werewolf Bowsorks, Crystal Weapon and Bound Armaments are two like bread and butter abilities that those builds have been using. So that build is just totally deleted. You can't have that build anymore. It's not going to be nearly as effective.
Yeah. Do you think that Crystal Weapon is still even going to be used at this point?
I bet a lot of people drop off of it.
Yeah, I just don't see the popularity of that. Seems like it's going to be pretty rare now.
It seemed like someone at ZOS was specifically mad at that particular build. Like it seems like with surgical precision, you're like, we don't want that build to exist anymore. I want to get that out of here. They did make a dev comment. They said basically Stam Sorks in this hybrid meta, they have too many good options available to them, and they just have more power potential than they really intended for. And I can kind of see the point there. So I don't think this means that Stam Sorks are dead or even that they're in a bad spot. I actually think Stam Sorks are still in a very, very good spot. I have a Stam Sork that does not use Crystal Weapon or Bound Armaments, never has. And he's still in excellent shape. He's doing really, really well. And I think there's at least a couple more ways to build a Stam Sork that would be super duper strong and really effective. This specific bow build basically is getting severely nerfed, and it may not be nearly as viable anymore, but you can definitely still make a really good Stam Sork. You can probably still make a really good bow Sork even. It would just have to be a different kind of setup.
Yeah, and like you said, your Stam Sork has gotten great results in PvP right now, and honestly, these changes, he's probably getting buffed with some of these changes we're about to go into. So
yeah, in general, most of these changes don't really affect him all that much, or if they do, they affect him positively.
Yeah, so I still think Stam Sork you can have a good Stam Sork. It's just maybe that one specific build is targeted.
Exactly.
One of the ZOS devs who plays in PvP ran into that build too many times.
Yeah. They went into some BGs and just saw that build as far as the eye can see and like, oh, we got to do something about this back at the office.
Got a couple hate whispers from the players, and they were like, oh, just you wait.
Dark Conversion, not to be confused with Dark Convergence. This is the sorcerer ability that trades stamina for magicka and health. Basically, they're slightly increasing the amount of health and magicka that you get, and they're also increasing the amount of stamina that it costs. So just all those numbers are going up a little bit. The stamina morph, the Dark Deal, the morph that you spend magicka and turn it into stamina and health. It's getting a very slight cost increase, and it's also going to restore its stamina over 10 seconds instead of 20 seconds. So it's restoring the same amount of stamina in half the amount of time. That's actually a pretty nice buff.
Yeah, that seems like a very significant buff.
I don't know if that fully compensates for the Crystal Weapon Bound Armaments nerfs that we just talked about, but it's certainly some compensation anyway.
For our Stam Sorks, it sure works.
Yeah, I'll definitely take it. I think I'm going to try switching to the Warrior Mundus and see if the sustain feels comfortable with this change.
Absolutely.
I might have to go back to the Serpent, I don't know, but I'm at least going to try the Warrior and see how that goes. And if so, that's just more damage for me. I think my Stam Sork, either way, I'm either going to have way better sustain or I'm going to have way better damage, one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems pretty good. The Storm Atronach Ultimate, it now lasts 15 seconds instead of 21 seconds, and it costs 275 Ultimate instead of 200. So shorter duration, higher cost. But now, when somebody activates the synergy, right now as it is, you activate the synergy and you give yourself Major Berserk and you give the Atronach Major Berserk. That's it. Now when somebody activates the synergy, it gives Major Berserk to them and 5 nearby allies. That's a very, very strong change. Major Berserk to your whole team, basically.
How long does it last? Do you know?
I don't remember the duration of that.
Gotcha.
And I'm not going to Google it. So we'll just enjoy the mystery.
Somebody will let us know at some point. Email scrollpodcast@gmail.com.
How long does the store Atronach synergy last?
I hope somebody just sends an email with just the time. 8 seconds. That's the whole email.
I bet it's at least 10 seconds. I don't know. The Greater Storm Atronach morph increases the single target damage by 30%. It no longer increases the duration of the ability, so it's still going to be 15 seconds. The Charged Atronach, that's the morph that I use on my Stamsork, it now only uses an AoE attack, and it attacks every 2 seconds. I actually really like that a lot. So it's just always pulsating out that AoE attack every 2 seconds. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just a lot different ability now. You know, it's kind of like, it's not really a nerf or a buff. It's just different to me. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, they just kind of shifted around the balancing there. 8 seconds on that Major Berserk.
Whoa! I just randomly guessed it. Look at me. Look at me. I just knew it. I knew it all along. I know that ability like the back of my hand.
Shout out to Grizzly Khan for getting that info in the Discord Ninja. So there you go. That's Sorcerers. Sorry, Bosorks. I'm sorry. It sucks. I know. It sucks to get nerfed. But I don't have a lot of sympathy because I'm a Templar main and
you're about to you're about to explain why you can relate.
I can very much relate. So Templars, puncturing strikes. That's the base ability of jabs, right? So sorry, I'm getting emotional about this.
Choking up. He's choking up, everybody.
So jabs now hits 3 times instead of 4. They reduce the cast time to 800 milliseconds instead of 1 full second. It has a whole new animation. I'm still on the fence about the animation. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I don't know.
Sure.
A very slight cost reduction, and here you go. They reduce the damage of the primary attack by 21%.
I feel like the part that really hits home for me with that is that me and you both have very similar Stamplar setups. And a big part of that build is the Deadly Strike set.
Mm-hmm.
The Deadly Strike set gives that ability a 15% damage buff. And they just nerfed the ability by 21%. They just wiped out Deadly Strikes and some on the ability.
Yeah.
That hurts. That stings. That's a deep cut.
Well, it's about to get deeper because we're not done.
We're not done.
The AoE portion of the damage is actually increased by 7%. So the way jabs works is you have a primary target that you deal more damage to, and then anyone else that's nearby that's in range of jabs, you deal a smaller amount of damage to those people. So that smaller amount of damage is being increased by 7%, right? The Puncturing Sweeps morph, that's the Magicka morph, reduced the healing to 33% of the damage done instead of 40%. And the damage done is decreased by 21%, so you're getting a lot less healing from it, actually.
Yeah.
And then Biting Jabs, the Stamina morph, it now adds an additional 25% to the AoE portion of the damage. Again, not the primary target, but the AoE portion. So the primary target, you're still doing 21% less damage to them.
Yeah.
So if you've never played a Templar, if you don't know, jabs is basically where all of your damage comes from. In a PvP situation, it's basically all jabs.
Yeah.
So a 21% nerf to jabs is basically just a 21% nerf to your entire offense, more or less, outside of your ultimate. So that hurts, and as if that's not enough,
we're still going.
The Burning Light passive. So the Burning Light passive now procs off of any attack rather than just Adric Spear abilities. But they increase the cooldown of the stack generation to 500 milliseconds instead of 1 millisecond. And basically what that means is the way Burning Light procs works right now is it's guaranteed to proc every single time you hit somebody with jabs. It's always going to proc. So you can just kind of count that as part of Jabs' damage. I always just mentally factor that in as part of the tooltip. It's just always in there. With this change here, Burning Light at best is going to be able to proc every other global cooldown, every other cast of Jabs, basically. So it's going to be hitting half as often at best. Plus, they reduce the damage of the proc by 33%.
Ugh.
It just keeps coming and coming and coming.
Oof.
So Jabs reduced by 21%, Burning Light reduced by 33%, but it's really 66% because it procs half as often. So man, just some major nerfs to Templar. This is one of the things, like I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, there's a lot of good things happening in this patch. I'm actually really looking forward to a lot of things. If they address a couple of concerns that I have, these are those couple of concerns. It's just all the Templar changes, basically.
Yes, the Templars are rising up right now.
Oh, man. And I don't really think Templars overperform. I've always thought they were solidly, like, upper middle tier, but not, like, totally dominating.
So my thoughts on this is at the risk of Ket's rage.
Easy.
I see where they were going with this, and just in the sense that every Templar uses Jabs. Every Templar. Like, if you're a Templar, you use Jabs. That's just the rule. Like, me and you have even had builds where we're like, well, we're going to try to be different and use non-Jabs, and then you go right back to Jabs. That's just, every Templar uses Jabs. So I can kind of see it from the side that they were like, well, let's try to make Templars that don't have to use Jabs. Like, I can kind of see that, kind of what I was saying earlier. If they've got an ability that everybody's using, usually they'll focus that ability to try to make less people use it.
Your class ability should be the best abilities available, though.
I do agree with that.
Right now on PTS, Templars are reporting that they're getting more damage from Rapid Strikes, the dual wield ability.
That's sad. Well, and that's the thing, too, is that, like, Templar's the one ability where, yes, like I was saying, I get where they're coming from. Everybody uses Jabs, so they're probably trying to reduce that. But, like, that's just what Templar is. Like, I think we're too far into this to try to change that Templar now. Yeah, like, Jabs is Templar. Like, when people make Templars, they make it for Jabs. I think we're too far into what Jabs are to try to change that now. It's been that way for so long. So many people have such muscle memory with Jabs that, I don't know, that's just...
This is really the one big bummer to me. I mean, the Sorcerer nerfs, honestly, I don't feel too strongly about it because they don't actually affect my Sorcerer, but I do see that could be a bummer to some people. But the Templar stuff is really what's, like, really sitting real with me, because I'm a Stamina Templar main, and my Stamplar is, like, in the best shape of her life right now. I mean, she is just, like, perfection. I finally got her exactly where she wants to be. She does very good damage. She also has very good support. She's just, like, exactly perfect. And, man, I log on to PTS with this character now, and it's like an unacceptable amount of damage. I'm going to have to totally reinvent the character, start all over again, because there's no way I can go into a battleground with that kind of damage. People will laugh at me. It's just not, it's not there.
This is a big one to me. I think Week 3 PTS, we're going to see some pretty significant adjustments to these numbers. I just can't think, I just can't imagine otherwise.
Yeah, there has to be something.
Yeah, they have to realize the uproar. People love Templars, and people love Templars because they're Jabs. I'm okay with the new animation. I'm even okay with the 3 hits instead of 4. If you want to make it quicker and change that up. It's kind of I don't know, it kind of feels like it's messing with all of our muscle memory, but okay, whatever. But
yeah, I can kind of adapt and get used to that.
Yeah, like you want me to get new muscle memory and try to learn how to, light attack weave with the new Jabs, that's fine. But just nerfing the spammable to just doing no damage is... I just can't imagine that damage nerf staying the same. That's got to lighten up a little bit.
Yeah, I would say this has got to be like number one thing that people are like, why are you killing my Templar? What did I do to you? So I think you're probably right. Week 3, surely going to see some adjustments to that. We must hold out hope.
We're all hoping and crossing our fingers.
Let's talk about Wardens. Some interesting things happening with Wardens here. So the Advanced Species passive now gives 990 penetration per animal companion slotted, rather than 2% damage done. That technically is going to be a little bit of a nerf. 990 penetration is equivalent to about 1.5% damage done. So compared to the 2% that you get right now, that's about a 25% nerf to that passive.
Even with that nerf, I kind of like this because I feel like it's easier to get weapon damage than it is penetration. And it's always good to have penetration on a build. And so I actually kind of like this.
Yeah, 990 penetration is actually pretty good, and it's actually pretty easy to put a whole bunch of those. You can actually make your whole front bar the entire Animal Companion's skill line, and it works.
That's old Bear Claw.
Yeah. But I would say technically a nerf, but still a good passive. The Cutting Dive, that's the class spammable, the Stamina Morph. It now has triple the chance to apply the bleed status, and the cost is refunded if you hit an enemy that's off balance. And remember, this ability sets people off balance, so you're going to get a lot of free casts out of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Magicka Morph, the Cliff Racer, it gives you 100 weapon and spell damage when you hit an enemy, or 300 weapon and spell damage when you hit an off-balance enemy. And that lasts for 10 seconds. And it no longer gives you the 15% increased damage done based on distance. You just get that weapon and spell damage thing instead. So here's the third time we're getting 300 weapon and spell damage attached to a spammable. Right? We had Dragon Knights, we had Nightblades, now we had Wardens. Didn't get it on Templar.
Didn't get it on Templar. Sorks don't have it. And Necros.
Strange. But I don't think a lot of Wardens use Cutting Dive, honestly. I think it's a very underutilized ability, and I think this does, both Morphs really, this does, add a little bit of incentive to use that. I mean, if your spammable is free half the time, that's going to be pretty nice. Or if it's giving you an extra 300 weapon and spell damage at all times, that's also pretty nice.
Also very nice, yeah. I think it's going to be pretty good. And it, the Cutting Dive's a little weird to use with a melee Warden build, just because it's this ranged, and so it kind of feels funny, but it works great with a Warden bow build. It works really nice with that setup. So, and this is coming from my Warden as a bow build, so I'm actually pretty excited about this.
I think a lot of people's gripe about it is the animation is kind of slow, and so it gets dodged quite a bit.
It's slow and very noticeable.
Yeah, super noticeable. It was actually, if you remember, when Wardens were first introduced, that was not dodgeable. You could not dodge that ability.
That bird was going to hit you no matter what. You just take it. You
had to just block it, was the only thing. This is probably my favorite change in the entire patch. I'm not even kidding. Falcon's Swiftness now grants 4 seconds of snare and immobilization immunity. This is just amazing. So Falcon Swiftness, that's the flappy spectral bird wings, like the eagle wings that you flap, and they give you major expedition, they make you run fast. Now it gives you snare and immobilization immunity, so it's a better version of Race Against Time. It gives you the exact same functionality as Race Against Time, except now you can choose a morph that gives you either minor berserk or minor evasion, and it's going to give you a stack of that advanced species passive, an extra 900 penetration for having it slotted. And it looks 10 times cooler than Race Against Time also.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So all around, I've always said if you're a Magicka build, you have to have Race Against Time. Absolutely not optional. It must be on your PvP build. Now, unless you're a Warden, in which case you should use Falcon's Swiftness instead. Yeah. Totally. And my MagDen, I'll get into my MagDen healer a little while later, but I'm already my finger's on the trigger. I'm ready to slot that ability as soon as this patch hits. It's definitely going right on there. So really, really cool change there. Now this one's a head scratcher though. Scorch. Scorch is the base ability of Sub-Assault. It's now going to hit after a 4-second delay, and then again after another 6 seconds after that, rather than just hitting after a 3-second delay. And then they reduce the damage by 8%, and they slightly increase the cost. All around nerfing that ability. It's going to be hitting less often, and it's going to be hitting for 8% less damage when it does hit.
Just a weird change.
Just a weird change.
It's it already takes a while to get used to that ability, I feel like, in your combo. You kind of have to get used to the rhythm of it, and they just wrecked all that again. It's oh crap, now I gotta really get used to all that over again. Yeah, now the Sub-Assault, the Stamina Morph, it goes back to hitting after 3 seconds, but then it's 5 seconds after that.
Still odd. Yeah, you're totally right. If you're a Warden main, like if you've been playing Warden ever since Morrowind, I mean, you are firmly entrenched in this like every 3 seconds kind of rhythm. You know, that's just what it is. There's absolutely no developer comment on this explaining why they thought this was necessary. I mean, if they need to adjust the damage or whatever, fine, but why just totally disrupt the flow of what it feels like to play a Warden for no no reason, apparently. No explanation why. It just seems so nonsensical to me.
I can see reducing the damage a little bit. You know, Sub-Assault's a very strong ability. It's an AoE.
I really don't think Wardens are like overperforming damage-wise at all, though.
That's true. I mean, if anything, I don't see a whole lot of Wardens right now. I feel like they're kind of rare, at least in the BG world.
Yeah, that's really the only thing, though. Like, everything else happening with Warden seems really good. I'm especially excited about that Falcon's Swiftness thing, but the spammable changes are good. That Advanced Species, that's a little bit of a nerf, but it's still a good passive. So that's kind of all the class stuff happening that seemed really significant. Dual wield flurry, that's the base ability of rapid strikes. It now hits 4 times instead of 5. They say it's basically going to have the same overall damage as it does right now. It has a totally new animation. I am not a fan of this animation. I'm sure I can get used to it, but it's not nearly as cool looking as the current animation. It kind of looks like basic heavy attacks.
It looks like it looks like your character's throwing a temper tantrum to me. Like, get away from me type temper tantrum.
Here's the concept. Horrible animation. Yep,
it's
agreed.
It's not great.
It's ugly. I have seen some people say that they like it, especially if you're using axes or maces. It doesn't look like you're trying to stab people with a hammer, and you're actually swinging them. And I get that. That makes sense. I like the rapid strikes animation, man. It's so like brutal, it just seems like you're stabbing them. This is just like flop, flop, flop.
I didn't even mind the hammer and axe animation because it's like, the idea of it was these rapid strikes. So even if you have a hammer or an axe, you're like hitting them quick, even with the end of it.
Yeah, you're like crushing their ribs and stuff.
Yeah, like you're still just, it's about, these quick hits that are going to be effective. And now it's just this, like, I don't know. I'm mad at you, flailing. Yeah. Get away from me.
Luckily, the functionality isn't really changing. They say it's going to do the same overall damage as it does right now. This is really the one change that actually does affect my stamp sort, because he does use this ability, and I'm going to have to get used to this new animation. So I'm sure I can. The Rapid Strikes morph, each hit is increased by 5% instead of 3%. I think that's to account for the fact that it's hitting 1 fewer times.
Yeah.
And it's getting a slight cost decrease. It's a real shame that that's going to be best in slot spammable for Templars going forward.
Well, it just goes against all reason, right? Like you said, this is an ability that if you're not a Templar, but you kind of want this type of ability, you use, it's not as good as Jabs. But if you're a Templar, this being better than Jab just makes 0 sense. Like, why would a ability available to every class be better than your specific class ability?
Yeah, that's known for being the best spammable in the game since forever. Anyway, that's really the only significant things happening to dual wield. Resto Staff, regeneration, reduce the healing by 40%. Big ol' nerf to regeneration.
Yeah.
And then rapid regen increases the healing done by up to 50% based on the target's missing health. So you get some of that healing power back if someone's really low on health, but in general, 40% nerf to the ability all around. That's definitely going to affect my healer builds, no question. But like we were saying earlier, it's a good thing for PvP. We need this specific ability needs to be nerfed, and I think it's going to make the PvP experience a lot more enjoyable. You'll actually be able to get a kill now and then, which will be nice.
It's make it be a little bit more fun when you get a couple kills.
Yeah. Grand healing, the ground AoE hot from the Resto Staff. The base ability now has a 10-second duration instead of 8 seconds. The healing ticks every 2 seconds instead of every 1 second. And then the Illustrious Morph now lasts 20 seconds instead of 12, and it no longer increases the healing done for that morph. And then Healing Springs isn't changed at all. It gets that 10-second duration like the base ability has, but otherwise nothing changes with Healing Springs. For PvP, this definitely means that Healing Springs is now the preferred morph when this update happens, because since it has a shorter duration, it actually heals for more per second. It's actually the stronger heal between the two now. And it helps you with Magicka Sustain whenever you heal people with it. So no reason not to use that. The 20-second duration on Illustrious Healing, you don't need a 20-second ground hot in PvP. No fight lasts. No fight stays in one spot for 20 seconds. No fight stays in one spot for 5 seconds. Yeah. So Healing Springs with a 10-second duration, that's more than plenty of duration. So that's just the one that gives you more healing. It helps you with sustain. No reason not to use Healing Springs instead. So my Warden is definitely swapping morphs of that as soon as this update happens.
Yep.
Vigor, the Alliance War healing ability that basically every stamina build uses. The base ability now lasts for 10 seconds instead of 8 seconds, so that means that the Resolving Morph is now 5 seconds, the Echoing Morph is now 16 seconds. The healing per tick has been reduced by 17%, and then the Resolving Vigor Morph has been reduced by another 5%. So that's 22% total, decreased healing for the Resolving Vigor nerf or morph compared to live. Which seems weird to me. That's the selfish healing. You're not healing other people with that morph. It seems weird that they're nerfing that by so much. And this ability never really seemed like a problem to me. But it now grants Major Resolve for 20 seconds whenever you cast it. That seems pretty impactful, don't you think?
Yeah, it's these kind of changes where you get like these needed buffs of skills that you're already using. I think they're actually they're really good, and I really like that they're adding these buffs to like skills you're already using to kind of combine. It just throws me off because my muscle memory is so not used to it that it makes my immediate reaction resist the change. But when I really think through it, I'm like, oh, this is good. It's gonna free up a bar spot for you if you want it to, and so it does make sense. It's just kind of crazy. It kind of reminds me of some of the abilities that they recently changed, like the attack abilities that were giving you the weapon damage buff. It's nice because you're freeing up bar spots. It's a change to muscle memory that you've had for a long, long time.
Yeah, it is weird, but I think I like it. I think it's neat to give you that option to just use that as your armor buff, and you can free up a bar slot and put something else in its place. Not everyone's going to do that. A Sork's not going to give up their armor buff,
No.
And there's a few other examples, but this is honestly another buff to Nightblades, really. They benefit from it more than anybody else, because unless they're wearing heavy armor, Nightblades don't really have a real reliable source of Major Resolve. They get it from a passive, and it only lasts a few seconds. So getting 20 seconds of it from Vigor, which they probably are already using, now they have easy access to that. They don't have to give up another bar slot for it. They don't have to wear Mighty Chudan or anything like that. This actually, to me, in my mind, amounts is really just yet another Nightblade buff.
It's interesting to me specifically, on my Oaken builds, I probably will drop Vigor. But on my 2-bar builds, obviously, I think I'll still keep Vigor and potentially have it replace, depending on the class, the armor buff with it. Yeah. So it's interesting.
If you're thinking of that, just a word of advice to anyone listening, if you're thinking of just using Vigor for your armor buff, be sure and take a look at your class passives, especially in the skill line that the armor buff comes from. Look through those passives and make sure you're not going to be missing out on something important by dropping that off your skill bars, because in some cases you really do miss out on some important stuff.
Absolutely.
But still, cool to have that as an option. I really like that. All right, here we go, guys. We're finally getting these sweet, juicy rewards for PvP that we've been waiting for. Can't wait. The time is finally here. So now you're going to get 10% increased XP gained from killing monsters and players in Cyrodiil and Imperial City. But that's not all. You also get an additional 10% XP from completing quests in Cyrodiil, Imperial City, and Battlegrounds. There you go. That's our PvP rewards, guys. We've been waiting a long time.
Big time.
I'm just waiting for the hordes to start flooding into those BGs and Imperial City and all that for that 10% extra XP.
Listen, did I play 3 Tales of Tribute match the other day and get 40 transmute crystals from it? Yes, but I sure as heck didn't get my 10% increased experience.
Yeah. So
you better believe it.
Take that.
Take that.
That's just funny that they even bothered doing anything at all. If that's all it's going to be, you know, like save it till you have some other stuff to add with it. That's just funny. So anyway, that's basically PTS. I mean, obviously we skipped quite a bit. We picked out the stuff that just seemed impactful to us. I want to do a quick recap here because this kind of helped me put some stuff into perspective here. So some good things that are happening. We have some interesting new armor sets. I think they did a great job on the armor sets. Cross healing is getting toned down. We're seeing some good adjustments to Dragon Knights, Nightblades, Necromancers, Wardens. Vigor giving that major armor buff is pretty cool. Oakensoul, Dark Convergence, Plague Break all got adjusted in some really good, smart ways. Certainly, you could say that they were nerfed, but really adjusted in ways that make them more applicable to what they were meant for. And heavy attack builds, totally deleted. I think those are all good things.
Awesome. Yep, all good things.
Bad things that are happening, it's actually a shorter list than I was expecting when I first started making this list here. Stamsorks and Templars are nerfed a little too hard, I think. I'm a little iffy on the jabs animation, and I straight up don't like the rapid strikes animation.
Sure. See, I'm a little different with you on this. I think Stamsork, the nerf is actually semi-okay, just because like what we talked about, it's a very singular build-focused nerf that was deleted, but I still think there's going to be a lot of good Stamsorks out there. I think they just saw a build that was using a set that they didn't really using a set not how Zos intended, and so that one doesn't really bother me so much. But yeah, I look at the Stamsork nerf and the Templar nerf as two different levels. The Templar nerf is just all Templars out there. If you're a Templar, you're getting nerfed. The Stamsork nerfs are not specific to all Stamsork, so I kind of look at those two differently.
Yeah, I would say the Templar is a bit more egregious, but I think there's probably a lot of Stamsorks out there that might have a disagreement on that. You know.
Yeah, that's true. There's certain Stamsorks that are cursing my name right now.
But yeah, that's basically it. Stamsorks and Templars nerfed too hard, and then a couple of new animations that aren't my favorite. But really, that's a pretty short bad list compared to all the good things that I'm looking forward to here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm just basically kind of neutral on the light and heavy attack changes. And the dot changes I'm kind of neutral on as well. But honestly, I could even put that under the good category. The dot changes, I think I'm going to enjoy that in PvE. I'm going to enjoy a PvP meta where dots aren't doing a lot of damage. So actually I should probably move that up to the good list.
Yeah.
I think it's important to just focus on that. There's been a lot of negative reactions, including myself, when this patch first dropped. But when you kind of look at it all like this, there's a lot more good stuff that I'm looking forward to than bad stuff. It's just that bad stuff, it's pretty bad.
My biggest takeaway is that it's still just weeks 1 and 2. Week 3 is the big week of changes. You know, if week 3 comes around and we don't, you know, and it's still this, then I can understand some heavy criticism. But, you know, week 1, look at week 1 Oakensoul. Good Lord.
Yeah, totally.
I mean,
a lot can happen.
Week 1 is just, you really do kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. It's not in the game. It's not live in the game yet. So until something like some of these, like the Stamplar changes, gets put live into game, I'm not gonna stress about it too much.
Yeah, I'll start stressing next Monday. Is what I'll start stressing if we don't see
some changes next Monday, then yeah, that's some valid stress. Because usually week 3 changes are that's kind of set in stone. They don't make a whole lot of changes after week 3.
Yeah. Let's talk just a little bit briefly about what we've been doing lately, mainly because I just feel like I have to talk about my MagDen. I can't wait another 2 weeks for the next episode. So I know it's a long one, but just hang in there, guys. We have just a little bit more.
You can't resist.
So we recently just jumped on the Oakensoul train just like a few days ago, right? You farmed it pretty quickly. You convinced me it's actually a really easy farm, so I went ahead and got it. And Yeah, I think less than an hour. I had it.
Yeah,
Pretty easy.
I got mine about 30 minutes. It was very easy, very quick.
It's pretty hilarious how quickly I've come around on Oakensoul and how when it was first introduced, I was like, I don't think I'm really interested in running a single bar build. Um, but as soon as I considered putting it on my Magic Award and just kind of playing a pure healer with Oakensoul, I don't know. I kind of started seeing the magic of this thing and how awesome it is.
You're loving it.
I'm really liking it, and I probably might make. I think I might make a couple more builds with it. I don't know. Like the juices are kind of flowing, and I really do think, in particular, it's really good on a healer. I like the fact that I don't have to ever worry about maintaining any buffs or anything. They're all just going all the time, and there's not enough room in my bar to have any kind of offensive stuff. I have to just be a healer. And I can just focus on what's in front of me and just do that and nothing else all the time. I'm just always in the zone, never not in the zone. It's a really fun, really cool way to play. I've really enjoyed it a lot. What do you think, man? What's your Oakensoul experience been like?
I'm loving it, man. Sorry, McDonald's. I've already thrown it. So I've thrown it on, let's see, I've got it on 2 builds already with a 3rd one planned. So I'm liking it that much.
Nice. So Lord of Nords is the main one that you've been doing. You want to tell us a little bit about your StamDK Oaken build?
I'll run through Lord of Nords a little bit. He's got, through the Oakensoul on there. And then I also took off the Champion of the Hiss. That was a tough one to take off. I love that set, but
hate to see it.
Hate to see it go. But he's running 3-piece Potentates, Oakensoul, 2-piece Bloodspawn, 1-piece Trainee, and then I threw the Warrior's Fury set on there because I feel like you can relate. You know this more than anyone. Lord Nords just kind of takes a beating in a BG. Like he's just kind of up front. He gets in there and he just takes a beating. And I've used Fury in the past, and it's kind of like, well, you kind of have to take a whole bunch of hits for it to go. Lord of Nords gets that quick. He gets a lot of when he's leaping around, and he attracts a little bit of attention. Remind us what Fury does. So what Fury does is you get every time you take damage, any type of damage, you get a stack of 24 weapon and spell damage for 5 seconds, and then it caps out at 20. So what is? We'll check my math there, but 24 times 20, I think is 540. Nope, 480. Just kidding. Okay. And it's kind of nice because, like I said, Lord Nords is leaping everywhere. He's taking hits. He's taking beatings. And those stacks are just constantly, they're working really well. And with the Oakensoul, he's been a lot of fun, which is kind of that single bar focus. I don't have to worry about his buffs or keeping anything up. He's really just kind of leaping. That's really what he's doing. It's just leaping from person to person. Spinning and leaping. That's what he's up to nowadays. You want to change his name to Mario? He just jumps from enemy to enemy. He'd get along with Mario pretty good. He tries to go with the taking him out Koopa style, where he's trying to jump on people's heads to finish them off. Sometimes it works, Mario might be onto something there. So, Warrior's Fury 5-piece, 3-piece Potentates, 2-piece Bloodspawn, 1 Trainee. What's your 1-bar skill bar setup? So I do the Breath as my spammable. I do Quick Cloak. He currently has Vigor on there. I might relook at that one with the changes, depending on how, what the tooltip is after kind of the nerf. But Vigor on there for heals. And then the Spin to Win Whirling Blades, that's kind of where he goes in there and tries to get, executes and things like that. But once again, AoE damage. And then the Coagulating Blood, which is a great heal on DKs now. It's fantastic. And then the ultimate is obviously the Ferocious Leap. And the nicest part about that ultimate is that he's leaping in there and getting that damage shield, but I'm still taking damage. So Fury's, ramping up the stacks while I'm actually not taking that damage. It's more that damage shield taking the hits. And he's, 3-piece Potentates, 2-piece Bloodspawn, Oakensoul, giving the heroism. He's leaping a lot. And so it's been pretty nice. I've been in some BGs and it's worked out really well for him.
I know that's all you've ever really wanted for this character is just
that's all I wanted.
Just
that's all I needed.
As many possible leaps as I can have. What's the leaps per minute count?
Oh, I bet it's at least. I bet I'm at least four or five leaps per minute, at least, maybe more.
Beautiful. We did a couple of matches with your Oakensoul Lord of Nords, StamDK, and my Oakensoul-MagDen healer. Her name is Aunt Lola. And I can't stress enough how delighted I am with this Oakensoul situation and how much I was expecting to really not be into it. I think it's in particular, like I was saying earlier, I think it's in particular the fact that I put it on a healer, and it really has forced me to just dial this thing in, like boil it down to its pure essence. Like what is the thing that this build is the best at? And let's just really focus super hard on that. And it's helped me even with like the role play aspect of the character. You know, it's kind of made everything so crystal clear. Like, of course, Lola, she's this warden. I have her set up to look kind of like this woodland creature. She has the Nordic bather's towel, but I have it dyed so that it looks like leaves, you know, and she's kind of like this Eve kind of figure. Yep. So in my mind, it makes sense that she's all about like nurturing and taking care of things and not harming anyone at all, you know. So
absolutely, she's got the little baby deer pet.
Yeah, she got the deer running around. So yeah, I don't have any just pure healers, so it just seemed perfect. Like, let's just make Lola a pure healer. It's going to be an Oakensoul build. It's going to be real simple, a real kind of efficient setup. But it works really well, and it gets the job done while still maintaining the theme and the headcanon and all of that stuff. It's amazing how much this Oakensoul has just brought it all into such clear focus, and I'm more excited about this character than I have been maybe ever.
It's awesome.
So anyway, the build for now at least is 5 pieces Rallying Cry, 5 pieces Gossamer, the Oakensoul Ring, 1 piece Magma Incarnate. It's a light armor build, all divines. The jewelry's all swift. It's a powered resto staff for the weapon. The skill bar, I'm using 2 ground hots, the class ability Budding Seeds, and then Illustrious Healing from the resto staff. My burst heal is Blessing of Restoration, the resto staff burst heal. And then I have Race Against Time and Crystallized Slab, and then the Healing Thicket Ultimate. And that's my build right now, and it's working really, really well in the current PvP environment. I think it's actually going to be better this next update. So the one thing I have to look out for is Gossamer is going to need to get adjusted. So because hots all tick once every 2 seconds now, and Gossamer gives you major evasion for 1 second at a time.
Yeah. They just need to give it a major evasion for 2 seconds.
Yeah, if they just make it 2 seconds or do something to address that, then the build will stay exactly the same. I'll keep it exactly how it is, Gossamer and Rallying Cry. If they don't do that, then I have Hades Hearth on backup to replace
Which
Gossamer.
is also a great set.
Yeah, and I actually really like using that on a Warden too. The theme fits really nicely.
Yep.
So I'll have no problem using Hades Hearth. If that's what it comes to, good, I'll do it. But ideally, I would use Gossamer. Because check out how perfect this would all line up. So once this patch goes live, I'm using Gossamer and Rallying Cry. I'll replace Race Against Time with the Deceptive Predator Flappy Wings. That'll basically do the same thing as Race Against Time, but it gives me minor evasion. So then I would have major evasion from Gossamer, minor evasion from Deceptive Predator. Basically, both of those are permanent at all times.
Nice.
Also, this next patch, I'll probably get rid of the Crystallized Slab. So the temptation is to just morph that to Shimmering Shield, right? And have the major
minor
heroism,
and
major and minor heroism. That's still a possibility, but I think Revealing Flare is probably going to offer some more value this next patch, and that gives major protection at all times while slotted, and Oakensoul will give me minor protection at all times. So major and minor evasion, major and minor protection, basically all permanently. I feel like, and this is like a little like light armor build, but I feel like she's actually going to be pretty darn hard to kill. On top of the rallying cry, giving me a ton of critical resistance, so I'll also be really resilient against Nightblades as well that are trying to gank me. So I'm just really looking forward. I think she's really going to have some really, really awesome buff coverage. Like all the buffs that are relevant to being a healer, it's actually going to be a better build with the nerfed version of Oakensoul, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
And then I'll remorph that illustrious healing ground hot to healing springs, since that'll be the stronger hot, and that'll give me some more sustain as well.
Yeah, she's going to get better off this next patch.
Yeah, but even right now, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I mean, Oakensoul as it is right now, being totally broken and busted how it is, is really good. That crystallized slab, so I don't have anti-stealth right now. I'm doing the crystallized slab instead. That's the other morph of Shimmering Shield. You put that shield around you and it absorbs projectiles, and then it shoots an ice ball back at them and stuns them. I feel like right now, with all the Bosorks running around, that's a very valuable skill to have. But that specific build is about to get heavily nerfed, and there's really not anyone else filling that niche, like a really deadly, really threatening ranged build. There's really not many of those out there aside from the Bosorks. And so if those are getting nerfed, I feel like Crystallized Slab and Shimmering Shield, both morphs, lose quite a bit of value there, because against melee builds, it's not doing anything. It's not protecting you from any of that damage. You're not getting the major heroism without absorbing projectiles. Whereas with Revealing Flare, that major protection is permanently active all the time, and Nightblades are about to be the primary threat with this next update coming up. So I'm going to want that anti-stealth that I can have from Revealing Flare as well. So that just seems like the move to make. I'm just kind of talking through my thought process going from the current meta into this next one. That's kind of what I'm thinking it's going to look like.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. It's been a great build. I've been getting like over 2 million heals in Battlegrounds with this build right now. And I'm still kind of learning how to be really effective with it and kind of getting the hang of everything. Even the fact that like sticky hots are being nerfed and AoE hots are being buffed, that benefits Lola because she only uses AoE hots.
Yeah, she's always been about the well, and even the targeted ones, so.
Yeah, just all around, I think like everything happening with this next update is just kind of going into making this build perfect. I'm really keeping my fingers crossed that they fix Gossamer so that I don't have to worry about that downtime and major evasion. And if they do that, I think life's perfect. Everything's great.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that you've been doing? How's High Isle coming along?
I'm pretty well. I don't know how far along I am, but no spoilers. I just found the first VIP missing person. If that kind of puts you, I don't know where that is in the quest chain.
Okay.
That's where I'm at, and the main quest. I kind of hit it hard this past weekend, and I feel like I made some good strides. And kind of like what you said. I won't go into it too much, but it's okay. Like it's good, but I don't notice like it being just this whole level above of any past expansion quest lines. But
yeah,
it's it's another one that it's interesting, and it's interesting, and I enjoy it. But I just look at it as another one. I don't see it as any different.
Yeah,
level.
That's kind of how I was with it. I did enjoy it.
Yeah,
I did enjoy it. I think if you're where I think you are, I think you're kind of just starting that kind of final ramp to the climax.
That's what it seems like. It seems like it's kind of the final group of quests before it kind of all comes together. Yeah. Or I don't know. I assume since that the story kind of has a temporary stopping point because they haven't fully finished the story. But
yeah, I feel like it kind of wraps up somewhat neatly though by the time you get to the end of it.
Yeah.
Grizzly says it's pretty par for the course. I have no idea where they got the idea that it's all political intrigue. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I did not really get a big political intrigue vibe from it, like with espionage and all that.
That kind of threw me off too. That was kind of the thing they said, right? Is that they're like, hey, this isn't anything major. It's just all really kind of lesser and in political intrigue. And as I've gone through the quest, I'm like, I don't know. It seems pretty on par. Maybe not with the last expansion where, a Daedric prince is coming down trying to, 80 feet tall wrecking buildings. Like, it's not to that level so far, but like, it still seems pretty major. There's important people involved, and I don't really get a lot of political intrigue espionage out of it.
Yeah. I'm with you there. Well, we'll keep checking in, and maybe next time. I bet by the next episode you will have finished it. Sounds like probably so. So we'll have to get your final review on it. That'd be cool. We got an email from T-Ren. T-Ren is asking if I knew of any Battlegrounds focused guilds on Xbox. Unfortunately, I've only ever played on PC, so I don't know of any Xbox guilds, but I told them that I would ask the listeners on the podcast if any of you guys know of a Battlegrounds focused guild on Xbox. If so, let us know. You can write us at scrollinpodcast@gmail.com, and I'll pass your message along to T-Ren so they can join up. So thanks for writing in, T-Ren. Special shout out to everyone who was in the chat tonight. Dr. Professor, Crimson, GrizzlyCon, King Nar, Skooma, had a poppin' house. Is that what the kids say?
Sure, our house was poppin'.
The house was poppin'.
Our house was poppin'.
Yeah, that's what everyone says.
Oh yeah.
Thank you guys for joining. Always a pleasure. Email us at scrollinpodcast@gmail.com if you have any questions or any suggestions for the show. Anything you'd like to hear us talk about, tell us a joke, say hello, anything you want. scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. We have a guild called Stoon's Goons.
Whoa.
What?
Whoa, I got a shout out.
Oh, okay.
I got a shout out in there.
Go ahead.
Everybody hold up your glasses of mead, put on your shout out GrizzlyCon shirts. Shout out to GrizzlyCon. He did me some favors. He was helping me out. I was doing a lot of theory crafting and build working, and he helped craft some things for me. Got a ring crafted for me. Shout out GrizzlyCon. Very appreciative of that. So
always a shout out to GrizzlyCon. There's always just like an understood shout out to GrizzlyCon.
Also a shout out for Grizzly because we're worried for his addiction to shout outs. So we're always looking for cures, and we're working him through this program.
Yeah, you can't just go cold turkey. It's dangerous. We have a guild. The guild's name is Stoon's Goons, best named guild on PCNA, and it is also the official guild of the Scrollin' Podcast. If you'd like to be a member of Stoon's Goons, send us an email at scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. If your guild roster is full, that is okay. We can get you into the Discord. That email again, scrollinpodcast@gmail.com if you want to be added to the Discord. And in my mind, anyone who's in the Discord is a fully fledged goon. So it's not like we're organizing events and I'm consulting with the guild list in game to make sure that you're technically in the guild. Nothing like that. So however you want to do it, scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. You really should join the guild though. It's really awesome.
Yeah. We had some guild chat this week. This past couple weeks there's been some chat. Wait.
Anyway, anything else, Davius?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Gotta get comfortable. Really bunker down.
Yeah, bunker, hunker, whichever.
Bunker,
whichever
hunker.
one.
Bunker, hunker. The hunker bunker.
All right, I'm writing that down. Hunker, bunker. Okay. That's a possibility.
Hunker, bunker, blunder. Combining the two.
All right, I'm doing the intro.